Hey guys, welcome. This is Donna and I'm here with a new video for the Whimsy Stamps channel. Now for today's video, I have a fun angled Z-fold card for you featuring the newly released Aussie Friends stamp set. Now this is a fun stamp set that features three larger critter images, which happen to be my favorite, as well as some fun and quirky sentiments that are kind of Australian slang or phrases. There is a product reveal video which I will link to in the card up above, and in that video there is more information about the stamp set, so do check that out if you're interested. I'll start off my card by cutting the card base. I am working on Bristol smooth paper because I will do a lot of ink blending. And this piece came from a 11 by 14 paper pad. So I'm going to take my paper the lengthwise side, and using my paper trimmer, I'm going to trim that piece at 9 3/4. Then I've rotated my paper and I'm trimming this side at 7 inches. So my card base is 7 inches in height by 9 3/4 inches in length. Then I've grabbed my scoring board and I'm going to make my first score line at 3 1/4 inches, and then my second score line is at 6 1/2 inches. And then I can fold my card base over at those score marks. And using a bone folder, I'll just reinforce those folds. So my first flap has the score line on the right side and the opening is on the left. So I really do hope the video is doing a better job than I am at explaining it in words. And in all actuality, I think I did this wrong. And if you are more knowledgeable about the Z cards than I am, please do explain it to me in the comments below. But when I look at my card over the top of it, my Z is backwards. When I flip over my card and I'm looking from the bottom up, then I have my Z. So I think I may have folded over my flaps incorrectly, but the card is still adorable and I do love it in the end. To get the angle cut, I measured my first flap at about a 2-inch mark, and then I'm going to cut the first two flaps at a diagonal. Here I'm just using my trimmer to line everything up, and then I can just cut that off. Now notice I didn't do anything to the third flap. This is just for the first two. So there is essentially what my card base looks like. Now, that was the hard part for me because I am not a measure type of a girl, but in any event, we're just going to move on. I have stamped all of the images onto Nina's Solar White 80-pound cardstock with Memento Tuxedo black ink, and I am using my Copic markers to color in all the images. As always, I do try to leave the caps up when I color, but I will have a list of the color combinations that I used listed over on my blog, which I've linked to down below. For the little kangaroo, I'm using some E markers, and I've started by wetting the paper with E30, and then I've added some shading in the shadow areas with an E27, and I did use that color very sparingly just to create a little depth in those shadow areas. Next, I'm coming in with E25 and I'm blending that out a little bit further into the image. And those first two shades, I would consider those my shadow shades, so I am using both of those very sparingly. And then I can take my mid-tone shade, which is E23, and then I start blending out a little bit more into the image. And then I'm taking E31 and I'm really working that color in to blend the previously added E23. It does take a little bit of effort on my part because they just don't blend easily. But if you continue building that layer, eventually you will get a smooth transition. And then I finish coloring the image by using my lightest shade, which is E30. Now, I do go over my images twice, and most of the time I don't show it on screen just because the video would be way too long. But on my second time on blending this image, I decided to add a little bit of definition. I guess that would be part of the leg. So I used my E23 to add a thin line and connect that part of the leg together. And then I've used an E31 to blend that out, and I'll finish everything off with one swipe over with my lightest shade, which was E30. So onto the koala, I decided to color this little guy with a little bit of the hair texture, so I left this part of the video in. I am using some W markers for this little guy, and I've started with W7 to add in some flick marks. I went all around the ears and the edge of his face, and I added in short, spaced out flick marks with my darkest shade. Then I've used a W5, and I'm going over some of those marks, but I'm also filling in some of the open spaces in between the first color. So I don't want a smooth blend, so I'm not really going over all of the flicks with this shade. I am still spacing that shade out. Then I'll do the same thing for W3, W1, and W0 to finish coloring in his base. Now, the second time I do go around this image to color it up, I really do define those flicks, the flick marks, and in the end, the little koala looks like there's a lot of hair texture. For that little tree that he's sitting on, I'm again using some E markers, and I've started by wetting the paper with an E30. And then I've grabbed an E29 and I'm outlining the edges of the tree, as well as adding in some of the E29 marker inside to define those spaces. I'll do some blending with an E57 followed by E23, and then I'll once swipe over with an E30 to blend everything out smoothly. So onto the ink blending, and I can tell you that when I do this card over again, I would do things just a little bit differently. The ink blending part of this card really took me a long time. I think it took me upwards of about an hour to do this. And that's because the combinations of inks I was using don't necessarily blend all that well. So in order to achieve a seamless blend, or as seamless as I possibly can, I had to continually build a layer upon layer and blend those transition lines. I've started with Squeezed Lemonade at the bottom of the panel, and then I came in and added Ripe Persimmons. I am using my blender brushes, but I did find as I was adding more and more, some of the colors went on a little bit smoother with like a foam ink blending tool. So I do go back and forth between the two. And this is just the first layer. I'm not too concerned with any kind of overly blending. I'm just adding the colors. And then the next color I'm adding is the Wilted Violet. And then I will finish off the top of the panel with Chipped Sapphire. I did also ink blend a strip of with Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn for what would be my grassy border. And then I decided I'm gonna secure my panel to my work surface area, and I just used some painter's tape. And then this is my second time going in with the same color blends. And this time I am a little bit more focused on blending that transition line between one color and the next. But there's still more work to be done. So after I finish the second blend, I think I come in for a total of 4 blends to really intensify the colors and smooth out any harsh edges of the blending of the different shades. And then I've spritzed my panel with some water and blotted it dry to create texture. And then I come in with a little bit of diluted white acrylic paint to create some splatters on that background. So here I'm sharing how I covered up a portion of the back of the second panel that would be visible when the card is closed up. By nature of the Z-fold card, you would see the front of one panel, the back of another panel, and then the front of a third panel. So I wanted the second panel to match everything else. So here I've taped off a section that would be visible so that I don't ink blend past those lines and keep everything clean. And then I'm just adding in the layers to match what would be the top of the first panel. And after all of that ink blending, I thought I would seal the card, and here I'm just using some of the Ranger microglaze. I have this foam ink pad tool, and I tap it straight into the bottle, and then to get some of that product onto that pad, and then I'll tap off any excess onto a piece of paper, and with light pressure I'm just blending that straight over the top of my panel. I do let that dry for a little bit before I start adhering my images. So now here at this point is where I realize I should have done things differently. And I'll tell you why. So I wanted to cover up the card to make it look a little bit more cleaner because I had ink everywhere, just a bunch of smudges, and at one point the tape shifted on me and I got it where I didn't want it, so I wanted the card to look clean. So I thought I would just create a black card base of sorts and attach it individually to each of the panels. Now, herein lies the problem. When you start adding bulk to a card like this, your nice crease lines no longer fold over, and the card doesn't lay flat, it starts to bunch up. So now that I know that I'm not the most neatest person when it comes to ink blending, and I had it all over the entire card, I think if I was to recreate this card again, I would probably create a black card base and then adhere the individual ink blended panels for my focal points. Here I'm just stamping out the sentiment on the back of the second panel, although when you're looking at it, you would see it when the card is all folded up. I've used some Versamark ink and I'm going to heat set that in place using white embossing powder. So here is the entire open card, and I'm going to start adding in all of my elements. I did want to create a little scene of sorts, and I had a little bit of trouble trying to match up the cuts of that grass border that I did, but in the end it's fine. Part of me wanted to use dimensional foam, and then again, after realizing the card no longer wants to fold when there's additional components, I opted to just adhere it flat to the card base. And then I've used my Scan and Cut to cut the images out, and I'm just going to start adhering them. I did color a couple of the koala bears, thinking I would adhere one more to one of the back panels, but I did change my mind on that, and for the one koala that I did use on this card, I just extended that little tree he's sitting on just by drawing it in with a black marker. So that will do it for me for this week. Let me know in the comments if you have done a Z-fold card and maybe there's an easier way to do something like this. I would love for you to share that with me. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the Whimsy Stamps channel and hit that notification bell to be notified the next time we upload a video. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the week, and I will see you another time.